Hello, I'm Brittney Tiller, the naturalist with Jefferson County Conservation. And one of the things that I have been wondering is, how did our amazing Fairfield Loop Trail come to be? And so we are talking to Ron Blair, the former chairperson of the Jefferson County Trails Council. And my first question for you is, how did the idea come to be?
Okay. So, interestingly enough, the origins were actually with the County Conservation Board. Ron Myers held a public meeting at the Nature Center and told the assembled group that the trail in the park was the most used asset on a day-to-day basis. And he said, it's used every day of the year by every age group and every economic group. And I was sold. It just sounded so amazingly kind of democratic and universal. Initially, our group tried to forge the trail that was going to go, the Cedar View Trail, and try to make it go all the way to Libertyville.
Yeah.
But it just didn't work out. There were too many landowners who didn't want to give easements. And finally, just out of sort of boredom and we started developing this idea of a loop trail, and we were able to partner with the DOT to have them build 5.5 miles alongside the bypass, mostly the southern part of the loop. And then we went to the city council and said, hey, look, we have this idea of an entire loop trail, and if the county is willing to maintain the southern part and we're able to build the northern part, will you maintain the northern half?
Sure.
And they said, of course, you pull it off, we'll do it. So that's the sort of the origins.
Yeah. So the Cedar View Trail is what kind of gave you a little momentum of like, we can do this. And then it went from there.
We built, the first thing we did was that nice lookout observation.
Yes.
That was what we did.
Yeah. Very good.
Yeah.
So as the project was, moving through, what was maybe the most rewarding part, and then what was the challenges that came with bringing it to fruition?
Well, for me personally, the most rewarding part was working with the entire community. Hitherto, I had been sort of somewhat insulated within the meditating community, and embracing the entire community was pivotal for me in terms of making the loop trail a success and just opening up my heart and my mind to really, this is a Fairfield project, it's not a meditator project. The challenge on a kind of macro level would be getting the landowners to give us easements. And they're concerned about liability, they're concerned about, what'll happen if people trespass. And so it took some convincing. We had to work with John Morsey, the city attorney, to come up with a template for easements, and it contained $1 million city liability insurance to put the people's minds at ease. We always made sure to try to put the trail at the very edge of a property, so it wouldn't be going down the middle like we did with the Fry family. That's the only one where that actually happened. So that was a real challenge. And we actually negotiated 23 easements.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Once it started gaining momentum and people knew, and we built a section, everybody thought this was really real, it became easier. And I will also add, initially we asked for a 25-year easement, and then as it became more successful, we went back to everyone and asked for them to become perpetual easements.
Smart.
Rewarding would be the amount of goodwill and volunteerism. We built all of the wooden bridges ourselves. That was probably, I don't know, I would say $1 to $2 million worth of sweat equity. From every walk of life, every kind of person in the community helped us with the bridges, and just the general goodwill of the community and how excited they all were.
So when I hear the price tag of what you guys saved by doing some in-kind work, what was the price tag of the project in its entirety, and how did you fund it?
Great question. I think we estimate the price of the Loop Trail when we first built it as something like $6 to $7 million worth of value. And that would include the infrastructure, the parts of the trail that were paved, and as well as the granular. That was expensive. Of course, the two huge bridges, the one over the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad and the one over Highway 1, those were $1.5 million just alone. What was the other part of that question?
I forgot to. Your funding sources.
Oh, funding sources, yes. That came through grants. We were in the golden age of grant funding, and also, quite honestly, Jefferson County was maybe on the leading edge, and so we were starting to get grants before the other communities were sort of ready to pursue their own trail systems. Federal grant money, regional grant money, that's federal money that comes to a particular region, state money, and then businesses and individuals. So altogether, probably $3 or $4 million worth of funds that way.
Now, when I hear the name Ron Blair, the first thing I think of is grant writer, because that was just before I even met you, that was the slogan that went with your name, phenomenal grant writer. So prior to the Trails Council, had you been active in writing grants, or was this like you just kind of hopped into it and worked your way through it?
Well, I've always loved writing. So as a sort of an English minor, I've always liked writing. However, giving credit where credit is due, we first started working with Pathfinders, RC&D, Dale Krause, and he had an intern whose name escapes me, but she believed in us. Dale was kind of like, you guys only have an idea, and you're not going to they're not going to just fund you a REAP grant, which is $100,000. And she really believed in us, and she worked, and we built up these great exhibits and attachments and put together a great grant, and we won that $100,000 grant, which allowed us to do the first section of trail, which was from Walton Road over to Pleasant Plain, and then from B Street over to 8th and Gear. And the Trails Council had raised enough money to do from Pleasant Plain to B Street. So we had a pretty big section there. And when we built that, it was an eye-opener for the whole community. And then after Dale moved on from Pathfinders RC&D, there was another person, Julie Falconer, who was there for a while, and then Deetra Detman came on board, and she is a brilliant grant writer, and she really is my mentor, really helped teach me, understand all the nuance and subtlety of what it takes, how you find out what the judges are looking for, and how you frame all of your answers and all of your attachments and exhibits to really, you're all about making the judges believe in you and your project.
That's awesome. When I, now that I've been working with you for a while and on some other projects, what I love about the Loop Trail is, and you've said this before, is that it's the necklace, what do you call it, the emerald necklace?
Emerald necklace.
Emerald necklace, connecting all of these natural areas or parks around Fairfield. When you had this concept, was that something you knew from the beginning, or along the way that took shape?
Along the way it took shape. We sort of realized, okay, well, if we're going to create the northern half, what's our preferred route? We want to go to Chautauqua Park, the largest city park. Actually, back up, we want to go to Lamson Woods and State Preserve. We want to go through the Neff Wetlands. We want to go through the beautiful Fry property right next to the creek, connect to Chautauqua Park, over the BNSF Railroad, and then the Long family gave us the first sort of huge easement all along their farmland, and then Pleasant Lake. Actually, we had already passed Walton Lake, then Pleasant Lake, then Bonneville Lake, MIU is part of the community, and then we worked our way out to Jefferson County Park. So we had a preferred route, and I will also at this point mention that a huge amount of, I'm going to call it grace, in the building of the trail is that we would have an idea of where we wanted the trail to go, and sometimes it would happen, somebody would say no. And we'd get really frustrated and upset and angry, and then like a better door would open. So it just worked out really well.
That's amazing. So you kind of mentioned there like your team of people that were really working. Obviously this was through the Jefferson County Trails Council at the time, but who were some of the other key players that that were part of this, and then what role, what things did they bring to the table?
Okay, that's really great. Well, of course, Ron Myers, the chair of the County Conservation Board, and Dennis Lewiston, who is the executive director, Sean Morrissey, who is his right-hand man, they were extremely supportive, and they wrote letters of support talking about how strongly the trail system was used in Jefferson County Park. They were very important players. Kent Rice, who was an engineer at French Reniker, and he was the first chairman of the Trails Council for the first 2 years, and then I followed him for the next 15.
Wow.
He was incredibly important. He designed a couple of the bridges, just pro bono, you know. Bill Matkin, a local engineer, designed several of our bridges. We paid Bill, but he also designed, I think, 1 or 2 of them for free or for a huge discount. Then the volunteers. We just had amazing volunteers. Chris Hallinger, Jeff Fitzrandolph, Bob Hunterdos, Bill Pollack. These are people who would just always be available. You know, if I pestered them and said, you know, can you help this weekend? Bill lent us his truck for over 20 years. He still lends us his truck. And then some professional builders, the Adams brothers, Marvin and Joe, helped us on Lamson Woods. Terry Klein from Oakwood Nursery, huge help. Too many people.
I know that's it's a loaded question, because as soon as you get done, you'll think of 5 more that you didn't mention. But wonderful. Now, there came, you know, when it was all said and done, was it hard to say, okay, you know, this baby is done, or was there this idea of like, we could keep creating spurs off of this trail? I know like the Cedar View Trail was kind of a spur, but were you like, nope, this was our goal that we set out to do, and, you know, I'm ready to hang my hat up a little bit? We
did look into a few ideas. Some people suggested, can't you somehow work along Pleasant Plain Road and work with the county, work with the DOT, and see if you can link up to Lake Darling? We did look into that. We looked into some ideas, but really what we did, Brittany, was we actually did more amenities. So for example, Judy Bales is a name that I had forgotten, but we worked with Judy and we were awarded 3 National Endowment for the Arts grants and integrated public art into the trails system, which was really fantastic. We designed all those pedestal educational elements that told all about the birds and the amphibians and the mammals and the history of the trail, and we sprinkled those all around the Loop Trail. We created mile markers, those Corten steel mile markers, which we actually sold, but that we raised $35,000 and helped us finish off the Loop Trail. Wow. So I would say that we continue to embellish and augment and add amenities rather than trying to build additional. And when I think about the Loop Trail, it was really, in a sense, it opened the door to possibilities. For instance, Pleasant Lake, the gazebo, the pit latrine, that really, it wasn't really seen as an outdoor recreation tool as much until the Loop Trail came through. And so
really transformed not just the path, but areas that it encompassed as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think all of those elements of the green necklace you mentioned all benefited from the Loop Trail, bringing more and more people. And if I can add, one thing that Kent helped us on was a couple of years ago, we worked with an RC&D office in Burlington, and they were willing to lend us twice during the summer these infrared recorders that would catch how many people were using the trails, and we set them up in different areas of the Loop Trail, watched what the weather was like for those particular days that the infrared was catching users, and we were shocked to realize that there were, during the best months, which are like May through October, about 400 people a day were using the trails. And what we realized was that we have all these parking lots throughout the whole Loop Trail, so you'd find people going to the Loop Trail before work, and then on their lunch break, and mothers with strollers, and then people right after work, and then people after dinner, all coming on different parts of the trail. So, so roughly around $400 people a day during the good months, and maybe half of that during the winter months. So, and I think you did a survey of Jefferson County Park.
We did a survey to our community to ask various questions, but one of them was which was the area that was utilized the most, and we expected that Jefferson County Park would probably be the most used area. Now, this didn't track like a school group coming in, but the Loop Trail was the most popular, most widely used of the areas that we managed. And to me, that was surprising, but you're right, the proximity. I know there's a lot of research coming out now saying, proximity to the outdoor recreation areas matter. And so certainly the Loop Trail lends itself to proximity to a lot of different people. But like you're saying, the frequency of use, you can go for the whole loop or you can do a short little bit and come on back. So that's quite exciting to see how much people are really enjoying it.
Yeah, I have an anecdote about that. I was walking out of a restaurant a couple of years ago, and a fellow and his wife were right behind me, and he says, "Do you remember me?" And I said, "Yes." His name was Ray Motti. He was on the city council. And he said, "I just got to tell you that when you were all talking about the Loop Trail and this and that, I thought it was a waste of money." He said, during COVID, my wife and I just felt stuck indoors. And so we split the Loop Trail up into like 12 pieces of pie. And every day we would walk, one section. And he said, I just want to tell you, we've walked the entire Loop Trail 24 times.
Wow.
And I think it's one of the greatest things in Jefferson County.
Yeah.
So,
I do think about how amazing, like you were saying, the Fairfield Loop Trail was really ahead of its time.
Yes.
Like we now live in a world where most people agree trails are one of the big draws for quality of life for young families, especially moving to an area.
Yes.
But that wasn't true, definitely when the idea was being formed. That was far ahead of its time, I would say.
I think so too. And I'll tell you that over the years, once or twice a month, somebody will come up to me and say, I can't imagine my life in Fairfield without the trail system.
Yeah.
So it definitely was ahead of its time, cutting edge, and now it's like an essential.
Yeah. Now, I have to ask, looking to the future, what are some challenges that the Loop Trail may face, or do you feel like it's set up very well to move into the future?
Well, always a difficult thing is if you conceive an idea, you create it, who's going to be there to maintain it?
Yep.
Who's going to stay on the task for years and years? We have some volunteers who, myself included, who are very proactive and dedicated to doing a certain amount of follow-up work. Stephanie Wharton on the Trails Council is the coordinator for that group. The Park and Rec Department and the County Conservation Board do the absolute best they can, given the fact that they have to maintain so many different things, and they have small staffs. And quite honestly, I think rural areas are more, they like quality of life infrastructure, brick and mortar. But quality of life, like a trail system, is sort of more abstract. So we're constantly thinking of what we can do to maybe raise more funds. What can we do to get a dedicated a trail technician to sort of maintain it year-round?
Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Wouldn't that be wonderful? Oh my gosh.
You have my vote on that. Awesome. Well, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I just great appreciation for you and what you are doing now in terms of working on conservation concepts that will enhance both the Loop Trail and all the areas that are right next to the Loop Trail. So I think conservation is the next big thing for us to pursue.
Yeah, I think it's so important to know the backstory behind things, especially. You know, I was young. I would have been in elementary school when the easement came through the Fry property, and I remember as a kid thinking, "This is cutting our fort building area. This is right through the prime fort building area of my parents' land," and we were kind of a little saddened by that. And now I think, wow, what an amazing thing that our family was able to be a part of that. But even more amazing is the thought and the idea, and then just the tenacity to make it happen, and not just one segment, but an entire loop around our town, and how it's really changed. It draws people to our community, but even almost more importantly, it gives a quality of life to our residents here. So, yeah.
And actually, again, I'm going to sort of turn the camera on you, which is you're now working on what I think is the next brilliant area, which is sort of ecotourism. So you want to talk a little bit about that in terms of the website and that area? Yeah,
just kind of, that might be a second episode, right?
Okay, yes.
But really the Loop Trail was the catalyst to kind of push into seeing what outdoor recreation can mean as far as tourism into an area, and then also that people are really looking for high quality places to visit, and they don't just mean that in terms of facility, they mean in terms of habitat and the ecosystem as a whole. So I guess we'll say stay tuned for the next episode on that one. But Ron, thank you for sharing the history and your piece in making the Fairfield Loop Trail happen.